Kansas got another Bill Self type of guy. Versatile wing Tre White, a transfer from Illinois, and KU football got a 2026 commit.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on? Derek Johnson here with Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for joining us here on the show. Thank you for tuning in anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show and on any audio platform as well. And thank you for joining us, as well as the everydayers, tuning into each and every show or making it your first listen every day. We're going to be breaking down Tre White, the multi-time transfer, deciding to make his fourth stop at the collegiate level with the Kansas Jayhawks. He's a former Kansas commit, now eventually finding his way into Lawrence. We'll break down his game because in a lot of ways becomes a Bill Self type of guy in terms of the game he brings to the table. We'll also finish up, in addition to Tre White's scouting report fit with KU, with a little KU football action. Kaden Moody, who is a class of 2026 three-star offensive lineman, committed to KU over the weekend as well. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by TurboTax. That's right, it is tax week. And with TurboTax, if you're ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed, head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. Okay, so Kansas lands Tre White. He becomes their second portal addition. They just had one on Friday evening, and thank you to the everydayers who already caught that one. And don't forget to check out them landing Jaden Dawson, who is a really good pickup for them from Loyola Chicago, kind of fits a specific role. And now Tre White becomes the second. And the immediate theme, just to go over here for Tre White and Jaden Dawson, is that these are guys who have that dog in them, so to speak, a little bit, right? And they're going to have to prove that a little bit more at Kansas specifically than their previous stops. But like, you talk to Loyola Chicago people, and that's how they viewed this kid, right? That he was a two-way player, that he was a gritty player in certain ways. With Tre White, he is a defensive two-way wing who can play the 3 and the 4. These are more Bill Self guys than maybe you've brought in the past. And it feels like, you know, some of those questions we had, okay, can Kansas recruit the portal for fit over just star power? So far, I think you're kind of 2 for 2 in hitting on that. But anyway, Tre White, it's also an interesting story because he committed to KU back in the summer of, I think it was 2019 when he committed to KU. And he was like a sophomore or junior in high school at that point in time. I think he was a sophomore going into his junior year. But eventually decommitted, you know, months later from that, ended up at USC his freshman year. I think that would have been for Andy Enfield. And then he ended up, after his first year at USC, going to Louisville for his second year with the Cardinals. Then from Louisville, he ended up at Illinois last season for Brad Underwood. They made it a 6th seed, made the second round of the NCAA tournament. And then he entered the portal again for what will be his senior season, final season of college ball, comes to Kansas as a senior. He can play the 3 or the 4. I prefer him a little bit more at the 4, but cool with minutes at both. But yeah, if I was picking to give him, you know, more of his minutes at the 4 and less of the minutes at the 3, I would prefer that. But like I said, 6'7", 205, he can kind of do a little bit of both. 10.5 points per game at Illinois. Obviously, you don't have to worry about the transition from a, another Power 5, Power 4, whatever you want to call it, conference. 5.5 rebounds per game, 0.8 assists per game, 0.4 steals per game, 0.4 blocks per game. And then he shot 51% from the field almost, 33% from 3 on a bit lower volume, 2.2 attempts per game. Really good free throw shooter, 82.4% on free throws this past season for Illinois. Not a ton of attempts per game, 3.2 per game, which is a fine number. The effective field goal percentage, good, 56%. The true shooting percentage, even better, at 61% for Tre White this season. The on-off offensive rating was not great. When he was on the floor, the team was about 10 points per game worse on the offensive end of the floor with him out there. But I'm going to get into this later. In segment 2, we're going to get into some interesting lineup conversation about why that might be, because I think there's some very interesting stuff to dive into. And then the team was about 2.5 points better on the defensive end of the floor. Also had a 3.1 rating on Bart Torvik's transfer rating, which is a very solid number there. So you look at the strengths and weaknesses of what White brings to the table. And I should also mention that, you know, some of those stats, he's playing 23.4 minutes per game for Illinois. So it's not the same as some of these other guys who you bring up their stats and they're playing 32 minutes per game or they're doing it at a lower level, right? you start to grade that on a curve for the per minute averages, and it looks even better than it is. And here's an example. When you look at things like rates, as opposed to just raw numbers, you look at one of his strengths, it is rebounding the basketball. He was in 93rd percentile in offensive rebound rate and 94th percentile in defensive rebound rate. So you look at the rebounds, you're like 5.5 per game. Like, that's a solid number. But you just think it's that. You think it's a solid number. You don't think it's an elite number. Then you look at the rebound rates, and you're like, oh, 93rd percentile offensive rebound, 94th percentile defensive rebound. No, he is an elite rebounder, right? And I think part of the reason why is he's a good athlete. He's got good size at 6'7". He's got the versatility to play the 3 or the 4. And I think that athleticism turns into some of that with the rebounding ability. He also was in the 98th percentile for second chance points per 40 minutes. So he turned those offensive rebounds into scoring opportunities. And he did it in a lot of games. He was consistent here. He had 12 games with 7 or more rebounds. He had 8 games with 8 or more rebounds. He had 4 double-digit rebound games. And over their 2 NCAA tournament games, he averaged 7 rebounds per game. And again, that's not playing 30 minutes every night. So that's really impressive there. He is somebody who is, again, kind of similar with your first portal pickup, not somebody who needs the ball in his hands. I do think Kansas wouldn't surprise me if they give him maybe some more opportunities to put the ball in his hands than Illinois had. But overall, he can still play off ball and be a good player. And as you continue to build this and build it around Darryn Peterson, you're looking for players to be able to play without the ball in their hand. And Trey White can do that at a high level. 94th percentile true shooting percentage, yet he had just a 48th percentile usage rate, right? So you have to be good about playing off the ball. And he did it in a myriad of ways. He did it on cuts, really good player in terms of cutting to the basket and finding the openings there. He was able to get in the paint, whether that was on a cut, whether that was in transition, whether that was, driving. He was 92nd percentile in paint points per 40 minutes. He shot over 70% at the rim this season, which was 87th percentile nationally. Part of that goes back to the cuts and the transition, but also because of his size and athleticism, he was able to finish once he got there. Also, if you watch some of his highlights, he has a really good reverse layup package that kind of stops shot blockers when they do get there from getting to him. So that's a nice thing for him to have. He did rate above average in ISO scoring, a bit lower volume than some of this other stuff, but at least he has shown that in his bag. That wouldn't surprise me if he gets to do it, like I said, maybe a little bit more at Kansas than he does at Illinois, even though you will still have, Darryn Peterson and stuff like that. But yeah, 76th percentile in points per possession on spot ups, which isn't just, again, spot ups is not you caught the ball and shot it always. A catch and shoot does count into a spot up, but a spot up can also be you're spotting up in the corner. Somebody throws you the ball, you pump fake, the guy blows by you, you drive to the rim and finish, right? There's that. Or if you just caught it and shot it, that would also be a spot up, right? So it's a myriad of things, but that shows you that, again, he can make things happen as an off-ball player and really attack a closeout in a high level. 83rd percentile in the points per possession for cutting, which I've kind of mentioned has been a strength for him. He also gets to the foul line at a high level, 86th percentile for free throw attempt rate, and he makes them. I mentioned over 82% on free throws when he actually gets there. So he gets there, he converts them. Okay, great on both of those. Also, the defensive end of the court. This is a guy who's known for being a good defender, right? He has the length, he has the athleticism at 6'7". This is a guy who can come in, and you're looking for defensive wings, you're looking for defensive stoppers, you're looking to, have everything you want around Darryn Peterson on both ends of the floor to be successful. And I certainly think he helps you in those areas. Now, going back to the idea, I do think, he can be even better as at a 4, as a 4, I should say, than a 3. But the idea here is if you are playing a team who plays a little bit bigger, you can play Trey White more in that game as a 3 and maybe play a bigger lineup with a 4-5 if you want to, right? But his rebounding ability and his versatility, I think, allow you to use him in multiple ways, similar to how Kansas kind of used Kevin McCullough as a 3 or a 4 at Kansas. Now, what are some of the questions here for Trey White coming into KU? The irony is a guy named Trey isn't a huge three-point shooter. He was just 22nd percentile in three-point attempt rate, and that was at about an average percentage of them going in. On corner threes, okay, so there's a couple different sites in how they value corner threes. I think Synergy views corner threes as like if you take them from kind of the slot area, like the wing area, it counts those into the corner, I'm pretty sure. On CBB Analytics, it only counts the corner as like basically the line until it breaks off, right? So on CBB Analytics, on like Synergy, his corner numbers are good, but then on CBB Analytics, his corner numbers are bad. So on CBB Analytics, which again is more like strict corner, Synergy is more wing corner, I believe. The corner threes on CBB Analytics only 30%, 29.7% to be exact. So not a great corner three-point shooter if you're just looking at that, but he was a good wing shooter. And above the break is 36.4%. So kind of on that wing is where he'll specialize, I think, that slot wing, whatever you want to call it. Both, though, do come on low volume that they could easily be switched for better or worse based on the percentage there. He attempted just 73s out of comparison. Hunter Dickinson had 58. DeJuan Harris had 84. AJ Storr in limited minutes took 79. And yes, that means DeJuan Harris took 84 threes at a 32.1% clip. White took 73s at a 32.9% clip. So that level of lack of shooter, you could say, okay, that's why maybe it makes more sense to play him at the 4 than it does the 3 necessarily. But that's also why going back to the addition of Dawson, it becomes important because you get a 3-point shooter that can help out space the floor with a player like White. I also think it makes it so that like we're if you're viewing the starting lineup right now as it's very incomplete, obviously, but if you viewed it right now as like Darryn Peterson, Elmarco Jackson, or let's just say Darryn Peterson, Dawson, Trey White, and then center, who would be that 5th starter you'd want to add? You'd probably want to get another player who can shoot threes pretty well. So maybe that is something you look for more now in the portal. Other mentions here for Trey White, not much of a passer, just 9th percentile for assist rate. He was also just 15th percentile for assist to turnover rate. Now, to be fair, if we go back to his role at Illinois being kind of low usage off-ball player, you're not going to get a ton of opportunities to rack up assists. So maybe that's just what goes into that. And as much as he's known for being a solid defender, why not more defensive stats? Only 8th percentile steal rate, only 36th percentile Hakeem rate. So that is a little bit of a question of just how good of a defender is he to bring up here. And then I also don't know why this is, but the team on-off ratings get worse with him on overall and O rating, as well as effective field goal percentage, offensive rebound rate, turnover rate, and free throw attempt rate for the whole team. Like, was he misused? Was he in bad lineups? Was some of it on him? Some of that stuff can be noisy. I don't know. So we'll get into that in segment 2 real quick, though. What's up with the 4 schools in 4 years? I want to discuss that as well. So let's get to those 2 big questions coming up on the other side and what his fit would be with KU. This is Locked on Jayhawks. And today's episode of the show is brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thanks for joining us here on Locked on Jayhawks. Don't forget to make Locked on College Basketball or Locked on College Football your second listen every day. Okay, so some of the big questions for Trey White, we discussed some of them. I mentioned some of the lineup ones. Let's go with the 4 schools in 4 years, because that's something that, maybe that worries you a little bit, especially after AJ Storr. And I do think with AJ Storr, it goes beyond just the 4 schools in 4 years now, because he's transferring away from Kansas. But in the case of Tre White, because the Storr one is 8 and 8 years. In the case of Trey White, this is somebody who will be on his 4th college in 4 years. And I don't know what his high school situation was. Like, I don't know if this is something where he did similar things or he was jumping around high school. I do think he finished his career at Prolific Prep, which is the same school that Darryn Peterson goes to. Obviously, there's no crossover, but I don't know if there's coaching connections or something that helped lead this. But you start to be able to make sense of it a little more when you look into the context here. With USC, so he goes to USC year one, then going into year two, USC brings in Isaiah Collier, who's like a 5-star recruit. They had Boogie Ellis coming back, who was their like leading scorer. Kobe Johnson coming back, who was, one of the leaders on the team. And then they were adding Bronny James, which the Bronny James thing didn't really pan out in terms of production for them, but like the hype was there. And like, so you could see Andy Enfield or just the writing on the wall for Tre White being like, oh, you're going to be behind a lot of these guys. They're going to be playing a lot of guards. Like, you're going to be fifth in the rotation here, yada, yada, yada. So he goes to Louisville, and it makes sense he transfers from Louisville at the end of the year because the coach gets fired, right? Now, how do you explain him transferring away from Illinois? He played a good role, and if he would have came back this year, would he have played an even bigger role? Maybe he viewed it as the other guys were going to come back at similar positions to him, and he wanted to go from being 23 minutes per game to 30, and maybe he has the opportunity at Kansas. I do think the fact that, so Bill Self is close with Brad Underwood, the head coach at Illinois. The fact that Kansas feels comfortable, that Bill Self feels comfortable taking him, I think I don't think Brad Underwood would lie to Bill Self about what's going on with Tre White. I think, I'm sure if Bill Self was making this move, he got some sort of approval from Brad Underwood that this could work in the right way. So honestly, I'm not as concerned about it with, as opposed to like when it did happen potentially with AJ Storr. So I mentioned some of that lineup thing that I think is very interesting. And this goes back to the idea that why I think he is more of a 4 than a 3. But again, you can play him some minutes at the 3, do both, right? But I like it more at the 4. And here's part of it. So he was in 6 lineups at Illinois that played at least 20 or more minutes. The 3 of them, because there were 3 with positive net ratings, 3 with negative net ratings. The 3 with positive net ratings, he was either playing the 4, or if he was playing the 3, because he's playing with another wing where it's like, who do you distinguish as the 3 or the 4? It was in a lineup where the 5-man was Avicic, who's a 3-point shooting center for Illinois to open up the floor, which basically allows it so that if you are playing the 3, there's more spacing because the center is able to shoot. But in the 3 lineups with negative net ratings, he was in for, and these are all the lineups he was in for 20 or more minutes. Again, there were 6 of them. He was either the 3, or you could argue he was the 3-4, again, where there's 2 wings, and it's like, who do you count at what? But there was a non-shooting center in Morez Johnson. So here's the thing. If you play him at the 4, some of the spacing questions go away. If you play him at the 3, some of those issues that led to negative net ratings for the team come up. So that's where I think it is important. Can Kansas play him more at the 4 than the 3? But other things he would help with the team. I mean, he would obviously get to the free throw line. They didn't get to do that enough this past season. He'd help with rebounding. After you lose Hunter Dickinson, you need to find more rebounding this year, right? He would help with athleticism and defense. Those are things that Bill Self will love, and clearly they've needed to get more athletic here. The low usage and off-ball play works perfectly when you have a player like Darryn Peterson. And what they wouldn't solve is obviously the 3-point shooting or the spacing necessarily. But again, if you play him more at the 4, you're at least getting more 3-point shooting than you had at the 4 this past season, though you could also view it as like, okay, but if you end up getting a center who doesn't shoot threes, then you basically just traded, okay, KJ wasn't shooting threes at the 4. Your center next year is not shooting threes. Hunter took 2 per game. That's what you'd be getting with Trey White at the 4. Can you just find more 3-point shooting at the other positions at that point in time? But yeah, man, I think overall, like, this is a guy that I'm projecting to be a starter. Obviously, we have to wait and see what happens with the rest of the portal because Kansas still has 6 open scholarships at this point in time. But I mean, if you're just projecting the starting lineup based on who's actually on the roster right now, I think you'd have to go with Darryn Peterson, Marco Jackson, whoever. Well, I guess you have to say Bryson Tiller at the 5, right? But probably most likely going to be a transfer there. But I like I said, we're talking guys currently on the roster, so you'd say Tiller at the 5, Dawson at the 3, and then you'd say Trey White now at the 4. And I think he's going to play big for KU in terms of big role and big minutes. And what did we talk about coming in the offseason? I think it's going to be more important for Bill Self as opposed to getting the guy who shoots 40% from 3. If he doesn't do the other things that is going to get him on the floor and keep the trust with Bill Self, he's better off just bringing in a guy who is, going to be his type of guy, going to be a junkyard dog, going to be somebody who does the little things to help you in basketball games because he's going to have that trust. He's going to be on the floor. And then you're not going to have to worry about the cohesiveness. And of course, yeah, I do have some of those shooting questions, but like I said earlier, give me the Bill Self team that he trusts because we've seen other Bill Self teams, or maybe they haven't been the best 3-point shooting team in the world, but he's able to squeeze the very most out of them, and they end up with a 1, 2, or 3 seed or something in the NCAA tournament because he can trust them. And similar, like, you look at Michigan State this year with Tom Izzo. Like, he loved that team. He trusted that team. They were a horrible 3-point shooting team. They made the Elite Eight and, very easily could have made the Final Four if a few things go your way against Auburn, right? So love the fit and love the idea of what types of players you are going for here if you're Kansas. But this move does make it so that you do need probably another scorer on the perimeter, another 3-point shooter on the perimeter. All right, KU football made a move too. Kaden Moody, 3-star offensive lineman. This episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Monarch Money. And have you ever checked your bank account and wondered where did all the money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. They have all-in-one convenience, too. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks, making it your first listen every day. We'll have plenty more transfer portal content, deep dives, what's going on, all the likes. But KU football, mid edition, Kaden Moody. And by the way, the football spring portal is going to open up here in like 10, 11 days, something like that. So that'll be something to keep an eye on for KU football. And we'll see what they go after at this point in time. But Kaden Moody is a 3-star from Broken Arrow High School out of Oklahoma. He is a class of 2026. And he is a 3-star recruit, 87 rating on 24/7 Sports, which puts you, or puts him, I guess I should say, in, I guess, the upper half of the KU football ratings. He becomes the 14th commit in the class for KU. And yes, on the composite ranking right now and on the overall ranking for 24/7 Sports, they have the 7th best class in the country. Now, part of that is just based on the number, the quantity of recruits they've gotten. If you just go by like average score, it's obviously not going to be top 10, but it's still going to be pretty good. This Kansas class continues to develop at a very high level. And so you look at adding I think, 3rd offensive lineman here. If you're Kansas, you had Caden Snyder, which I guess Caden is just a popular offensive lineman name for KU, but he's a 4-star recruit from Salina Central in Kansas, is a local kid. Moody becomes the 2nd highest rated offensive lineman, and then Malachi Mills, 6'6" offensive lineman from Indiana, was an 86 graded 3-star. And in the case of Moody, he had offers from Purdue, Baylor, Memphis, among others here. Athletic offensive lineman, played both ways as a sophomore and a little bit on the defensive line last year. But an athletic player that, obviously, you say this with like every offensive lineman that comes in. He's listed at 6'6", 300. I don't know that he's quite 300, but you're going to be looking to add weight to him. You're going to be looking to add muscle to him. But you like to get athletic guys. And that is a constant theme of what KU usually goes for with offensive linemen at the high school ranks. It seems to be a couple things to me. Smart guys, players who can be versatile on the offensive line, right? Like possibly play different positions on the line. And then guys who are athletic, to where they are putting trust in Matt Gildersleeve, which deservedly so, because he's been a great strength and conditioning coach for KU, that he is going to pile on the weight. He's going to get them in the right regimen to, get their body up to Big 12 level. That now you're going to combine that with the athleticism and the smarts that you're looking for, because there's very few schools in the country. It's mostly like the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Texases of the world, right? And there's other ones too, that are able to recruit consistently the offensive linemen who have it all coming out of high school, who have the 6'6", 330-pound frame that can play right away as a freshman to do this and that. Kansas is a team that has to live on recruiting kids like this, where you're projecting them out that they're going to build up that body eventually. And so finding those other traits you're looking for is so important. It seems like they did it again with Kaden Moody here. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. We'll be back at you to talk more portal talk, maybe more KU football talk on our next episode of Locked On Jayhawks.